Good evening, everyone. Yeah, audible now? Yeah. Good evening. I'm here to present before you an emerging model of empowering the Anganwadi workers to transform ECE. What was the need to develop a working model for Anganwadi workers really is where I start. So there were two things happening. There are two things happening rather. So there is a thrust on ECE, and we have talked about achieving developmental goals when we talked in Nipun. We gradually shifted into achievement of Nipun Lakshyas and FLN. In order to achieve these, we were now building capacities for Anganwadi workers because they were interested with building capacities for children themselves. So now what was happening is there were a large set of manuals, curriculum, teacher manuals, teacher training, online and offline and all of that. But in the process, the difficulty was the Anganwadi workers were asking a few questions. What do I do? How do I do it? How do I do what I'm doing is right? And what do you mean when you say I have to do it better? So those were the critical issues that we saw on the field. So there's how we brought in this objective and a program called SCAPE. We've designed it in 2 stages. We are on stage 1 right now, as you can see. The prime concern is how to work with Anganwadi centers directly so as to bring about improvement in such a way that it leads to better results for children and all stakeholders involved. Now, when we are visualizing this, we are looking at the Anganwadi worker not as an employee who is following instructions. This Anganwadi worker is a professional who is entrusted with the task of pursuing holistic development for children. So that is what an Anganwadi worker is, and there has to be an ownership generation when she has to be doing certain tasks. That being said, what are we really looking at achieving? How do you visualize the end? So when we visualized a quality Anganwadi center, here are the 6 major points that we thought of. There could be more, but to begin with, these 6. Now, if you look at each of them, you will realize that there are 3 aspects to quality here. There are a set of relationships, set of processes, and therefore a set of outcomes. Where did this vision for a quality AWC emerge from? On the right, if you see, it's a child's right perspective. It is based on the understanding of child development in general. So if you read the points against that, makes more meaning of how it was implemented. Yeah. That being said, we started our work 1.5 years ago in February 23 by doing a situational analysis before that and selecting a few Anganwadis. While working to support the Anganwadi workers, what we were doing is we were being curriculum agnostic. Now what does that mean? It was that whatever the state was following, we went ahead with that. There was a PEHEL curriculum that the state had in place, and there were manuals and materials that state was supplying. So we were not intervening in any of that way curriculum agnostic, and we were supporting the Anganwadi workers to proceed with whatever issues they were coming up with, and with, of course, pedagogical support inputs for them. So when we did that, in other words, we started from a level of their performance. We looked at where they were, and in a sequence of their learning. What was interesting as a finding was Unlike teachers, when we work with them, train with them, they are, the first things that they do is do a lot of interaction with the children. They learn how to make interactions with children better. With the Anganwadi workers, they were better on working with TLMs first. With teachers, this comes at this next stage. So they would make TLMs first from their context, then build on what do I do with this TLM, and also identify I can do even this. So their sequence of learning was a bit different from the sequence of learning of the teachers. So identifying that, at stage 1, we developed performance standards. So the performance standard for Anganwadi workers was develops basic skills and creates a learning environment. That's the first major ask from the Anganwadi worker. It had 3 indicators. 1, creates a learning environment. 2, conducts child-centered activities within the classroom. 3, makes a plan and does a holistic teaching in the classroom. Those were 3 indicators. If you look at A, B, C, D, these are levels of performance, where the expected level of performance is level B. A is ideal. Our expectation from the Anganwadi worker was that she reaches B. Our observations showed that a lot of them were on D to begin with. So our work by observing the Anganwadi workers at the centers led us to create these indicators, which in the next phase we are going to give to them as self-assessment, because this tool is an assessment tool to understand where she is also a tool to know what can she do to make it better. So assessment, we believe, should serve the people who it is being conducted with. Goes to next. Okay. At this stage in our program, one CDPO offered us to develop 5 more Anganwadis. We were already 1 year into the program, so we decided anyways to do an assessment. So we could do a comparative assessment now with 5 new Anganwadis and our 17 older ones. So for the assessment, we wanted to understand, are we succeeding in achieving quality? And these are the 7 questions that we dealt with. If you look at these 7 questions, these are similar to the vision questions, vision statement that we have about an Anganwadi center. So if that was the vision, are we attaining it? Therefore, these questions. So central to our concern for assessment was belonging that the children feel, engagement within the classroom, developmental levels attained, holistic development, all 5 domains, parents' response, Anganwadi workers' performance, and the administrator's response. How did we assess? Now, this is an assessment model which is quite different from the assessment models that prevail. It is not very objective, not positivist, very subjective, because it is a rights-based perspective. We say that assessment serves those who are assessed, and in this case, the children and the Anganwadi workers. It has to be respectful. The stakeholders have to feel at ease when the assessment is being conducted. Children are at ease when assessment is being conducted when the Anganwadi workers conduct it, rather than outsiders. So, and the assessment per se has to be a learning experience for the child also. So we designed 6 learning tasks in all 5 domains, and Anganwadi workers conducted this assessment. While developmental levels of children were assessed, the other aspects to this assessment were to find out key relationships, key processes, and key outcomes, and also a feedback on how we are faring as an organization that is supporting the Anganwadi workers. So I give the sample there. We did an in-depth study, mixed methods approach, and only in 2 blocks with 4 Anganwadi centers. Okay, these are the tools that we developed. And when we say developmental level of children, under the 5 domains, this is what we were assessing. This assessment was held in June. In June, younger children had just come. So you'll see a lot of focus is not on writing and reading, it is on oral language development. So depending on what time of the academic year the child is, the assessment was designed. Presenting a few results. If you look at these two graphs, the one on the left is for 3 to 5 year olds, one on the right is for 5 to 6 year olds. The green is the centers that we were working with before, and the yellow ones are where we haven't intervened as yet. So if you look at that comparison, notice 2 things. There is a difference in how the younger ones and the older ones are performing. Even the green ones in the category 1 centers is very low. Implications and findings show that there is a lot of thrust on foundational literacy and numeracy. The other 3 domains are being relegated. Allocation of time for other 3 domains is lesser than literacy and numeracy because of the thrust of FLN from top down. That was a concern. The other problem was that Anganwadi workers themselves wanted to experience the kind of activities that we were asking them to do under all 5 domains. And also we found that because younger ones were not being engaged with as much as the older ones when it comes to separating them and working in groups. Therefore, the results were showing so. The children's results were because of Anganwadi workers' performance. How were the 2 linked? I was talking of 3 indicators. So those 3 strips are 3 indicators and the performance of Anganwadi workers. The outcomes attained. Category 1 centers are the previous centers.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you can summarize.
Yeah, sure. This is the last one. So these are the outcomes, processes and relationships developed. This is through observation data. And now what is the insight that comes from this project is that it is an emerging working model. By building on ongoing inputs that the state already has. It encourages ownership because the Anganwadi worker herself is being capacitated in the process. The performance indicator based system has 2 qualities. 1, it can assess where you are. 2, it can also lead to how it can become better. This method can be applied to one Anganwadi center and it can be scaled immediately once it is developed fully. And the other bit is that since it is a low interference model, we are not into the field all the time. And it is the Anganwadi workers who are supported with on-site trainings. We can, as an organization, go away from the system and yet the practices are sustainable. That's it.
We have time for one question.
Fine, so we can ask. Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Hello. So I have a couple of questions. So yes, thank you for both the presenters. First of all, so it was nice.
It was nice hearing both of you because at ground level what is happening, we teach, we do research, but a lot of things like government and NGO, like they are working hand in hand and now progress is being made. It was very insightful to know. A couple of the questions which I have is that suppose that even if you are measuring oral language development, what is the parameter through which you are measuring? So even if we are observing, what is it that we have to, in numbers it should be telling something. In kind of tests which are doing or the observation method which you are using, so numbers if you could show us, that
Okay.
will kind of giving more insight.
Okay.
Reality. So how it's developing from age 2, 3 to 4 to 5, and what are the the tests and measures that is being used by Anganwadi workers or in various schools which she had conducted earlier, like in 5 different schools.
Okay.
So these are my questions because it looks very nice to see, but in
How did you do
reality,
it?
so we should see that what are the practices that are.
The assessments.
Yeah.
So we had 6 assessment tasks. If I talk of, let me take this, I'll give you 1 or 2 examples, the tasks that we did. So these were 6 tasks. One task was to assess physical development as well as socio-emotional learning turn taking. So there was a ball game where children had to line up, all children had to line up, and the ball had to be transferred to each other in a certain way. Once like this, the second time like this, third time like this, and then like a zigzag. So it gets complex at each level, transferring this ball, although it's a fun game, so a lot of excitement. So that element of waiting for my turn is very difficult. As a physical development, I could understand those motor skills are there, but the turn taking was a tough one here. So observations on are they waiting for their turn to do it were recorded on a scale of 4. Fully doing it, not participating at all, doing it somewhat, and mostly doing it. So there was a scale of 4. There are recording sheets and scorings on that. So that was for the language bit. We had now our take on the assessment tasks also is that it has to be interesting, it has to be challenging for the child, because that's when children engage more. So for the language task, there was a poem by निरंकार दे सेवक on an animal. तो चूहे की कविता है, तो उसमें वो ऐसे.
How do you gauge that? What is the level of learning that has happened? So number of words produced by a child. So that's how I am saying.
Okay. Oral language development in this case was that क्या बच्चे मुखर हो के बातचीत कर लेते हैं, क्या बच्चे सवाल पूछते हैं.
But that's pretty subjective. So in terms of objectivity, I'm saying that number of words produced in a second or minute.
Oh, that fluency you're talking about.
Fluency or the production, because you can retrieve the information which you have. So as fast as possible, that talks of the fact that you are being proficient.
In terms of number of words per minute, I think we are talking about reading now. We are not talking about oral language development. Oral language development parameters would be can a child,
Forget about it. So in oral language development also we can ask if the child learns to speak. So fruits name and all. It's not about reading. It's about retrieval of certain.
No, these were not recall answers actually. So इसमें oral language development में खुले सवाल थे. So there are 4 kinds of questions that we are talking about. There are listing questions which will give you a yes or no or recall based information. Then there are process questions and imagination questions. So kinds of questions were built into this task. So recall recognition you can quickly identify, but when it comes to imagination and process based questions, are they able to answer that and also form a question and ask back to you? That's even a higher order thing. So that's how.
Thank you so much. My sincere apologies for rushing. It's just that we have to ensure the 4 rooms are in sync. We are a bit short on time. If it's okay, may I request you to ask a question during the debate? Thank you so much,
Oh,
Deepti.
thank you.